Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku was chosen for high-risk missions only. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The screen flickered, casting a cold, stroboscopic blue light across the obsidian conference table. The room was silent, save for the hum of the ventilation system and the rhythmic tapping of a manicured fingernail against a glass of water. On the massive monitor dominating the wall, a nightmare was playing out in high definition. It was drone footage, recovered from the debris of the Shai Hasaikai raid. The image shook violently, the camera's stabilization software struggling to compensate for the atmospheric pressure waves radiating from the center of the frame. In the video, the world was ending. Stone spikes the size of skyscrapers were being pulverized into dust in mere instants. The villain, Overhaul, had become a monstrosity of flesh and fused matter, a kaiju born of desperation. But the eyes of the woman sitting at the head of the table were not fixed on the monster. They were fixed on the boy, Izuka Midoriya. Hero name Deku. He was a blur of green lightning, a comet trapped in the atmosphere. He moved with a speed that the drone's frame rate couldn't catch, appearing as a streak of neon power. He wasn't dodging. He was tearing through the attacks. He wasn't fighting. He was dismantling reality. With the small girl strapped to his back, acting as a living battery of infinite rewind, the boy was utilizing 100% of a power that had previously broken his bones just by existing. Now, he was using it to punch a hole in the sky. The video ended with a final, cataclysmic shockwave that turned the screen to static. The Public Safety Commission president, a woman whose smile was usually as sharp as it was polite, picked up a remote and froze the frame just before the static. The image showed Midoriya's face. His eyes were glowing, not with the heroic determination usually plastered on UA merchandise, but with a feral, terrifying intensity. It was the face of a god realizing it could crush an ant. "Tell me, Mera," the president said softly, her voice echoing in the soundproofed room. "What do you see?" Yakumura Mera, the weary commission executive who looked as though he hadn't slept since the All Might era, shuffled his papers. He adjusted his glasses, looking at the frozen image. "I see a student who engaged a catastrophic threat and neutralized it. I see the rescue of the asset Eri. I see a miracle, Madam President." "A miracle," she repeated, tasting the word like sour wine. She stood up, smoothing the creases of her impeccable suit. She walked to the screen, placing a hand over the frozen image of the boy. "That is the problem with your department, Mera. You look at results. I look at potential." She turned to face the empty chairs of the boardroom. All Might was a deterrent. He was a pillar. He stood still, and the world revolved around him. "He was a statue of gold," she began, her voice dropping an octave. "But this isn't a statue. This is a warhead." She tapped the screen. "We have reports from the scene. Sir Nightai is dead. Mirio Togata has lost his quirk. The casualty list is significant. And amidst the rubble, a 15-year-old boy accessed a level of kinetic energy equivalent to a tactical nuclear strike." She paused. "And he did it without authorization. Without a handler. Based on emotion." Mera frowned. "He had a provisional license. The situation was critical." "The situation is always critical, Mera," she snapped, the veneer of calm cracking for a split second. "We are in the post-All Might vacuum. The villains are getting bolder. The League is growing. And now, we have a child at UA High who possesses power that rivals the symbol of peace, but possesses none of the restraint." She walked back to her chair and sat down, opening a thick black folder stamped with a red warning, classified level 0. "If he loses control in a city center? If he decides that the law is too slow? Who stops him, Mera? Endeavor? Hawks?" She laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "No one stops him." She pulled a single sheet of paper from the file. "It wasn't a hero license. It was a conscription form. We cannot expel him. If we cast him out, he becomes a vigilante, or worse, a martyr. We cannot imprison him. The public loves a hero who saves little girls. So, we must do the only thing the Commission has ever been good at." She slid the paper across the obsidian table toward Mera. "We will weaponize him. Properly." Mera looked down at the document. At the top, in bold, capitalized letters, were the words, "The Atlas Protocol." "Bring him in," the president ordered, her eyes cold and dead. "Bring an Eraserhead and All Might, too. They need to understand that their student is graduating early." UA High School, Heights Alliance dorms. 3 days later. The rain had been falling for 24 hours straight. It was a cold, gray deluge that turned the vibrant campus of UA into a washed-out watercolor painting. Inside the Class 1A dorms, the atmosphere was suffocating. Usually, the common room was a cacophony of teenage noise. Mina Ashido shouting over a video game, Bakugo screaming at Kirishima, Ida scolding someone for putting their feet on the table. But today, the silence was heavy, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator and the drumming of rain against the windows. Izuku Midoriya sat on one of the sofas, staring at his hands. They were scarred. Twisted. The skin was rough, a topographical map of every mistake he had ever made. He flexed his fingers slowly. They didn't hurt, not anymore. Recovery Girl had done what she could, but the phantom ache of 100% one for all still throbbed in his marrow. He hadn't slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Sir Night Eye on that hospital bed. He heard the flat line. He felt the cold realization that future sight had been wrong, but the cost of changing it had been a life. "Deku-kun?" Izuku flinched, snapping his head up. Ochako Uraraka was standing there, holding 2 mugs of tea. Her eyes were red-rimmed. She hadn't slept much either. The raid had taken something from all of them. "Sorry," Izuku stammered, his voice hoarse. "I was just thinking. You're squeezing the cushion so hard it's about to pop," she said gently, offering him a mug. Izuku took it, his hands trembling slightly. "Thanks, Uraraka-san." She sat down next to him, leaving a respectful distance. "You know, Aizawa-sensei said we're on mandatory downtime for another week. You should try to rest. Real rest. Not just laying in bed staring at the ceiling." "I can't," Izuku whispered. He looked into the dark liquid of the tea. "Night Eye. Togata-senpai. I keep thinking, if I had just been faster. If I had been stronger from the start." "You defeated Overhaul," Uraraka said firmly. "You saved Eri. That has to count for something." "Does it?" Izuku asked, and the darkness in his voice surprised even him. He looked up, his green eyes dull. "Mirio lost everything. Sir is dead. And I felt something, Uraraka. When I was at 100%, it wasn't just power. It was too much. It felt like I could break the world if I stepped wrong." Before Uraraka could respond, the front door of the dorms slid open. The sound of the electronic lock disengaging was loud in the quiet room. Shota Aizawa stood in the doorway. He wasn't wearing his sleeping bag or his casual clothes. He was in his full hero costume, his capture scarf wound tight around his neck. His hair was wet from the rain, plastering against his tired face. But it was the man standing behind him that made the air in the room drop 10 degrees. It was All Might. But not the deflated, casual Toshinori Yagi they were used to seeing in the dorms. He was wearing a suit that looked too big for his skeletal frame, and his expression was a mask of grim resignation. "Midoriya," Aizawa said. His voice wasn't angry, but it lacked its usual lethargic warmth. It was flat. Professional. "Get your blazer. We're leaving." Izuku stood up, the tea sloshing in his mug. "Sensei? Is something wrong? Is it Eri?" "Eri is fine," Aizawa said, stepping into the room. He didn't look at Uraraka or the few other students who had poked their heads out of the kitchen. "The Hero Public Safety Commission has summoned you for a debriefing regarding the Shai Hasaikai operation." "A debriefing?" Ida asked, stepping out from the hallway, chopping his hand nervously. "Sir, surely this can wait? Midoriya is still recovering from significant physical and emotional trauma." "It cannot wait," All Might spoke up. His voice was hollow. He looked at Izuku, and for the first time since they had met, Izuku saw something in his mentor's blue eyes that terrified him. "Fear. Young Midoriya," All Might said softly. "Please. Just get your coat." Izuku set the mug down on the coffee table. He looked at Uraraka, who looked confused and frightened. He looked at Aizawa, whose fists were clenched at his sides. "Okay," Izuku said. As he walked to the elevator to get his uniform, he felt a chill crawl up his spine. This wasn't a debriefing. He had analyzed enough villains, enough situations, to know the atmosphere of a trap. He just didn't expect the trap to be set by the people he was sworn to serve. The transit. The car was a black sedan with tinted windows, the kind used by government officials who didn't want to be seen. Izuku sat in the back seat between All Might and the door. Aizawa was in the front passenger seat. The driver was a man in a black suit who hadn't said a word since picking them up. The silence in the car was heavier than the silence in the dorms. Izuku watched the city streak by through the rain-slicked window. Tokyo was gray and blurring. All Might, Izuku whispered, breaking the tension. What's going on? You look pale. Paler than usual. Tashinori flinched. He placed a bony hand on Izuku's knee. Izuku, my boy. Whatever happens in that room today, I want you to know that I am proud of you. I am proud of the hero you are becoming. You sound like you're saying goodbye, Izuku said, his heart hammering against his ribs. The commission, Aizawa spoke from the front, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. They viewed the footage of the fight. They aren't happy. I saved her, Izuku argued, his voice rising. I stopped Overhaul. You used an unregistered, unquantifiable amount of power that caused structural damage to a 3-block radius, Aizawa countered, though his tone suggested he was quoting someone else. To them, you aren't a student who saved the day. You're a liability with a quirk they don't understand. They want to revoke my license? Izuku asked. He could handle that. He could earn it back. If only it were that simple, All Might murmured. The car slowed as they approached the Hero Public Safety Commission headquarters. It was a monolith of glass and steel, towering over the surrounding district. It didn't look like a place of justice. It looked like a fortress. They pulled into an underground garage, bypassing the main entrance. The security checkpoints were rigorous. Biometric scans. Quirk suppression cuffs were threatened but waved off by Aizawa's glare. They were led to an elevator that had only one button. Top floor. As the elevator ascended, Izuku felt the gravity of the situation pressing down on him. He looked at his reflection in the polished metal doors. He looked small, a child in a school uniform, surrounded by adults who controlled the world. One for all, he thought, clenching his fist. I have the power of All Might. Why do I feel so helpless? The doors opened. The ivory tower. The conference room was vast, cold, and intimidating. The president of the HPSC sat at the far end of a long table. She didn't stand up when they entered. Erase her head. All Might. Midoriya, she nodded to each of them in turn. Please sit. They took their seats. Izuku felt like he was in the principal's office, but infinitely worse. The air smelled of ozone and expensive perfume. Let's skip the pleasantries, the president said, lacing her fingers together. We have reviewed the Shai Hasaikai raid. While the outcome was favorable, the methods were unacceptable. He saved the girl, Aizawa cut in, his voice low and dangerous. He did what a hero is supposed to do. He acted as a vigilante, the president corrected smoothly. And in doing so, he revealed a level of power that threatens national security. She turned her gaze to Izuku. It felt like a physical weight. Izuku Midoriya. Your quirk. It is not a simple strength enhancer, is it? Izuku froze. All Might stiffened beside him. It stockpiles power, she continued, her eyes narrowing. But the output you demonstrated, it defies biological limits. Our analysts suggest that if you were to lose control in a populated area, say, Shibuya Crossing, the casualty count would be in the thousands. I won't lose control, Izuku said, trying to keep his voice steady. I'm training. I'm learning. You are 15, she stated. And you are emotional. We saw the footage. You were weeping while you fought. You were unstable. She slid a file across the table. The commission has made a decision. We cannot allow a quirk of this magnitude to exist within the standard hero curriculum. It is too dangerous. The risks of collateral damage, of you being targeted by villains who want that power, or of you simply snapping under the pressure, are too high. So you're expelling me? Izuku asked, his hands gripping the edge of the table. No, the president smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. If we expel you, we lose oversight. And we cannot have a nuclear warhead walking the streets unsupervised. She tapped the file. You have two options, Midoriya. Option A. We classify you as a catastrophic threat level. We revoke your provisional license. We place you under indefinite protective custody. You will be confined to a maximum security facility where your quirk will be suppressed until we deem you safe. Which, given the nature of your power, may be never. All Might stood up, slamming his hands on the table. Blood coughed from his mouth. You can't do that. He has rights. He is a minor. He is a weapon of mass destruction. The president shouted back, her composure breaking. Don't preach to me about rights, All Might. You hid the truth of one for all from the world, and look where it got us. A vacuum of power and a society on the brink of collapse. She took a breath, regaining her icy calm. Option B, she said softly. You enroll in the Atlas Protocol. Atlas? Izuku asked, the word feeling heavy on his tongue. A specialized division within the HPSC. It is not for public heroes. It is for problem solvers. She leaned forward. You will be removed from standard classes at UA. You will remain enrolled on paper to maintain your cover, but your education will be handled by us. You will be assigned missions that are deemed too high risk, too sensitive, or too morally gray for pro heroes. You want to make him an assassin, Aizawa hissed. I want to make him a scalpel, the president corrected. The world doesn't need another symbol of peace, All Might. We tried that. It failed. When the symbol cracks, society crumbles. No, what we need now is a ghost. Someone who removes threats before the public even knows they exist. Someone who can go into the dark so the rest of society can stay in the light. She looked at Izuku. You want to save people, don't you, Midoriya? That is your drive. That is your obsession. Yes, Izuku whispered. The Atlas Protocol targets the threats that regular heroes can't touch. Terrorist cells. Quirk-enhancing drug rings. High-end Noma factories. If you join us, you will save thousands of lives, but you will do it from the shadows. No fame. No merchandise. No credit. She paused, letting the silence stretch. And if you refuse, well, option A stands. And I will ensure that UA High is investigated for harboring a known threat, potentially leading to its closure. And All Might. I imagine the public would be very interested to know exactly how he passed his power on, and why he chose a reckless child. It was checkmate. Izuku looked at All Might. The former number 1 hero looked defeated. He was trembling, not with fear, but with rage and impotence. He couldn't protect his successor from the bureaucracy he had helped uphold. Izuku looked at Aizawa. His teacher looked ready to fight his way out of the room, but they both knew that would only end in disaster. Izuku closed his eyes. He thought about the dorms. He thought about Ochako's smile, Ida's hand chops, Todoroki's quiet friendship. He thought about his mother. If he refused, he lost his freedom. Yui would be destroyed. All Might's legacy would be tarnished. If he accepted, he lost himself, but he could still save them. Slowly, Izuku reached out and took the file. He opened it. The contract was dense, filled with legal jargon, but the intent was clear. Total obedience. Total secrecy. Young Midoriya, don't, All Might pleaded, tears streaming down his gaunt face. We can fight this. We can. It's okay, All Might, Izuku said. His voice was steady now. Terrifyingly steady. He looked up at the president. If I do this, Yui stays open? My friends are safe. All Might is left alone. You have my word, the president said. You become our asset, and they remain our protected citizens. Izuku, you don't know what you're signing away. Aizawa warned. This isn't hero work. This is soldier work. It will break you. Izuku picked up the black pen resting on the contract. He looked at his scarred hand, the hand that was meant to reach out and save people. I'm already broken, Sensei, Izuku said softly. At least this way, the pieces can be useful. He signed his name, Izuku Midoriya. The ink looked like blood against the stark white paper. The president smiled, a genuine, predatory smile. Welcome to the Atlas Protocol, Agent Deku. The goodbye. The transition was immediate. They weren't allowing him to go back to the dorms to pack. Security risk, Mara had said. A clean break is better. They allowed him 5 minutes in a holding room with Aizawa and All Might while a tactical team prepared his transport. All Might was weeping openly now, his large form hunched over on a metal bench. I failed you, my boy. I brought you into this world, gave you this burden, and now I've let them shackle you. You didn't fail me, Izuku said. He felt strangely numb. The panic was gone, replaced by a cold resolve. He was analyzing the situation, compartmentalizing his emotions. It was a survival mechanism. You gave me the power to save people. That's all I ever wanted. Not like this, Aizawa said, leaning against the wall, his eyes hidden by his hair. This isn't what UA stands for. We raise heroes, not hitmen. Somebody has to do the dirty work, Aizawa-sensei, Izuku said, looking at his palms. If I do it, maybe Kaken, and Uraraka, and everyone else, maybe they won't have to. They can be the heroes in the light. They can smile for the cameras. You're 15, Aizawa choked out. You shouldn't have to be a martyr. I'm not a martyr, Izuku said. He looked up, and his eyes were dry. I'm an asset. They made that very clear. The door opened. A woman in a tactical suit stepped in. Time to go, asset? Izuku nodded. He turned to All Might. Tell Mom. Tell her I'm on a special work study. Tell her I'm safe. Please. Don't let her worry. I will, All Might whispered. I promise. And tell the class. Izuku paused. He thought about the lie he had to craft. Tell them I wasn't strong enough to stay in 1A. Tell them I had to go train. Tell them not to wait for me. I won't lie to them, Aizawa said. You have to, Izuku said firmly. To protect them. He turned and walked toward the door. He didn't look back. If he looked back, he would crumble. He walked out of the holding room and into the corridor. The departure. The HPSC hangar bay was vast and smelled of jet fuel. A sleek, black tilt-rotor aircraft sat waiting, its engines whining in the damp air. Mero was waiting by the ramp. He held a bundle of fabric in his arms. Your old costume was colorful, Mera said, his voice devoid of emotion. Marketing creates targets. The Atlas protocol requires discretion. He tossed the bundle to Izuku. Izuku unfolded it. It was a variation of his hero costume, but the green was gone. It was matte black and dark gray, made of a ballistic weave that absorbed light rather than reflecting it. The bunny-ear cowl was sleeker, more angular. The iron soles were reinforced with jagged cleats for traction and damage. The white gloves were now a dark charcoal. It wasn't a costume for a hero who announced, I am here. It was a suit for someone who whispered, You never saw me. Get changed, Mera said. We have your first assignment. Already? Izuku asked. There is no rest for the wicked, Midoriya. Or for the righteous. And right now, we haven't decided which one you are. Izuku boarded the aircraft. He changed in the cramped cargo hold. The black suit fit perfectly, tight against his skin, compressing his scars. He pulled the mask over his face. The world narrowed to the view through the eye lenses. He felt the aircraft lurch as it took off. Through a small porthole, he watched the ground drop away. In the distance, barely visible through the rain and the gloom, he saw the lights of Yue High School on the hill. They were warm, golden lights. He imagined the common room. Dinner would be starting soon. Sato would be baking a cake to cheer everyone up. Bakugo would be yelling at Kaminari. Uraraka would be wondering where he was. He pressed his gloved hand against the cold glass. Goodbye, he whispered. The aircraft banked sharp left, turning away from the school, away from the light, and heading toward the horizon where the storm clouds were darkest. Izuku Midoriya sat back in the harness. He closed his eyes and reached for the well of power inside him. One for all hummed, a thrumming engine of energy. It felt different now. It didn't feel like hope. It felt like a loaded gun. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. Asset Deku. We are en route to the drop zone. Target is a trigger manufacturing plant in the Gifu Mountains. Hostiles are heavily armed. Rules of engagement? Izuku opened his eyes. The green irises glowed in the dim red light of the cargo hold. What are the orders? Izuku asked, his voice flat. Mera's voice came over the comms. Total dismantlement. No witnesses. Izuku stared into the darkness. Understood. Part 1. The empty chair. 2 months is a strange amount of time. It is long enough for a habit to form, but short enough that the absence of a routine still feels like a phantom limb. In Class 1A, the phantom limb was the desk behind Katsuki Bakugo. The morning sun filtered through the high windows of UA, casting long, geometric shadows across the classroom. Cementos was lecturing on the importance of structural integrity in urban rescue scenarios, his deep voice a monotone drone that usually lulled Kaminari and Ashido into a daze. But today, like every day for the past 8 weeks, the room felt brittle. Ochako Uraraka stared at the back of Bakugo's head, then let her gaze drift slightly to the right. The desk was still there. They hadn't removed it. It was clean, dusted every evening by Ida, who treated the plywood surface with the reverence of a shrine. Izuka Midoriya. The name wasn't spoken much anymore. It hung in the air, heavy and unsaid. Overseas study, Aizawa had told them the morning after the raid. His eyes had been bloodshot, hidden behind his capture scarf, his voice leaving no room for argument. Midoriya's quirk has reached a critical stage of evolution. The Commission has determined that UA's current facilities are insufficient to contain him safely. He has been transferred to a specialized facility in America for intensive control training. It was a good lie. It was logical. It explained the suddenness, the lack of contact, security protocols, and the involvement of the government. But it tasted like ash in Ochako's mouth. She gripped her pen, the plastic digging into her fingertips. He didn't say goodbye, she thought, the hurt cycling through her for the 1000th time. He just vanished. In front of her, Bakugo was vibrating. It was a subtle thing, invisible to anyone who didn't know him, but Ochako saw it. The tension in his shoulders, the way his quill was snapped in two, ink leaking onto his notebook. Bakugo knew something. He had to. He was the only one who knew about One for All besides All Might. The bell rang, signaling lunch. The class exhaled collectively, the tension breaking into the usual chatter of food and hero gossip. Hey, Uraraka! Mina called out, bouncing over to her desk. We're going for cold soba today. You coming? Yeah, Ochako forced a smile. Just, give me a second. As the class filed out, Ochako lingered. She watched Bakugo shove his books into his bag with unnecessary violence. He stood up, kicking his chair back, and stormed toward the door. Bakugo, she said. He stopped, his hand on the frame. He didn't turn around. What, round face? You know where he is, don't you? Bakugo's shoulders hunched. He turned his head slowly, his red eyes narrowing. There was no fire in them today, only a cold, simmering resentment. I don't know anything, he growled. The damn nerd is gone. That's all that matters. You don't believe that, she challenged, stepping closer. You haven't yelled at anyone in a week. You're quiet. It's scary. Shut up, he snapped, but there was no heat in it. He looked at the empty desk. For a second, his mask slipped. He looked guilty. If he wanted to be here, he'd be here. He chose this, did he? Ochako asked softly. Or did someone choose it for him? Bakugo didn't answer. He turned and walked away, his footsteps heavy in the empty hallway. Part 2, the teacher's lounge. Shota Aizawa hated coffee. He drank it because it was fuel, not because he enjoyed it. Today, the black sludge in his present mic novelty mug tasted particularly bitter. He sat at his desk in the faculty office, surrounded by stacks of grading he hadn't touched. Across the room, Toshinori Yagi sat on a sofa, staring at a turned-off television. The former symbol of peace had lost even more weight in the last 2 months. He looked like a ghost haunting his own life. He's alive, Toshinori, Aizawa said, not looking up from the blank paper in front of him. Is he? Toshinori's voice was a rasp. I tried to call him yesterday. The number is disconnected. Mera says it's part of the immersion protocol. He's on a mission, Aizawa said, the words feeling like gravel in his throat. He is a child, Toshinori whispered, clutching his knees. And I sent him into the dark alone. We didn't have a choice. There is always a choice. Toshinori snapped, the sudden volume making Midnight look up from her vanity mirror across the room. Toshinori shrank back into himself. We were too weak to make the right one. Aizawa slammed his mug down. Stop it. Wallowing doesn't help him. Training the ones who are left helps him. Making sure there's a world worth coming back to helps him. He stood up, grabbing his capture scarf. Where are you going? Tashinori asked. To the gym, Aizawa said, his eyes flashing red for a brief second. Bakugo needs to blow off steam. And frankly, so do I. As he walked out, Aizawa checked his phone. No messages. No updates. Just the silence of the commission. Don't die, problem child, Aizawa thought, a desperate prayer from a man who didn't believe in gods. Just survive. Part 3, The Jungle. 4,000 kilometers away, the concept of survival had taken on a very different meaning. The rain in the Golden Triangle didn't fall, it hammered. It was a solid sheet of water that turned the world into a gray slurry of mud and vegetation. The humidity was a physical weight, pressing against the lungs, thick with the smell of rotting leaves and ozone. Deep within the jungle, on the border where Thailand bled into Laos, sat a fortress. It was a drug compound, hidden beneath a canopy of camouflage netting and ancient teak trees. It was run by the Red Lotus, a cartel that had recently begun synthesizing a new, more volatile strain of trigger. They were heavily armed, quirk-enhanced, and expecting trouble from local authorities. They were not expecting a ghost. Perched on a thick branch 30 meters above the compound, a figure crouched in the downpour. He was invisible against the night. His suit was a matte black ballistic weave that seemed to drink the meager moonlight. The only color on him came from the faint, sickly green glow of his HUD lenses and the metal soles of his boots, which dug into the bark of the tree. Izuku Midoriya breathed in. The air was hot and wet, but inside his mask, it was filtered and cool. Heart rate, 45 BPM. One for all, 15%. Steady. Asset Deku, a voice crackled in his ear. It was Mera. The voice was crystal clear, cutting through the sound of the rain. Status. In position, Izuku replied. His voice was different now. The stutter was gone. The nervous pitch was gone. It was lower, flattened by 8 weeks of solitude and violence. Thermal scans show 45 hostiles in the outer perimeter. 12 inside the main production facility. 3 heat signatures in the command hut consistent with the targets. Rules of engagement remain unchanged, Mera said. The facility produces black trigger. It amplifies aggression permanently. If that shipment leaves the jungle, it hits the streets of Tokyo in 3 days. Burn it down. The lieutenants, Quan and Chai, are to be neutralized. Lethal force is authorized if containment is impossible. Copy, Izuku said. And Deku? Yes? Try not to break the suit this time. It comes out of your stipend. The line clicked off. Izuku stood up on the branch. He didn't feel fear. He didn't feel excitement. He felt the cold calculation of a math problem. Distance to target, 200 meters. Patrol patterns, overlapping every 40 seconds. Quirk signatures, kinetic emitters, transformation types. He didn't scream smash. He didn't charge in. Black whip unspooled from his wrists, not as wild tendrils of energy, but as thin, focused wires of darkness. He snagged a branch 50 meters away. He moved. He was a blur. A shadow detaching itself from the tree line. He swung through the canopy, silent as a spider. Below him, 2 guards were smoking under a corrugated tin roof. They were laughing, rifles slung lazily over their shoulders. One of them had a mutation quirk, scales covering his neck and arms. Izuku dropped. He didn't land on them. He landed between them. Before the splash of his boots hitting the mud could register, he moved. 20% full cowl. His right elbow slammed into the scaled guard's solar plexus. The man folded, the air leaving his lungs in a wheeze that was silenced by a chop to the carotid artery. He dropped unconscious. The second guard turned, eyes widening, raising his rifle. Izuku didn't punch him. He lashed out with his left hand, black whip wrapping around the barrel of the gun, and the man's throat in one motion. He yanked. The guard flew forward, meeting Izuku's rising knee with his forehead. Crack. The guard crumpled. Izuku stood over them. 2 down. 43 to go. He dragged the bodies into the tall grass. He didn't check their pulses. He knew exactly how much force he had applied. They wouldn't wake up for 6 hours. He tapped his earpiece. Outer perimeter breached. Moving to interior. He looked at the compound. The rain washed the mud from his black gloves. He felt the phantom ache in his arms, the memory of his old heroic ideals clashing with the efficiency of his new reality. A hero saves everyone, All Might had said. An asset removes the threat, Mera had corrected. Izuku moved deeper into the dark. Part 4, The Factory. The interior of the production facility was a hellscape of chemistry. Massive steel vats bubbled with a glowing purple liquid. Pipes hissed, releasing steam that smelled of sulfur and artificial sweetness. The workers here weren't wearing hazmat suits. They were shirtless, sweating, their eyes wide and dilated. They were testing the product. Izuku crouched on a catwalk high above the factory floor. He analyzed the structural integrity of the vats. Pressure valves. If I rupture the intake manifolds, the pressure builds. The fail-safes will trip, dumping the chemical into the containment pits. But I need to destroy the catalyst. Hey! Who's up there? A spotlight swept across the catwalk. Izuku cursed internally. He had mistimed the patrol of the upper gantry. The light hit him. For a second, he was illuminated, a black demon with glowing green eyes. Intruder! The alarm blared, a harsh, rhythmic klaxon. Suddenly, the floor below erupted. One of the workers, a man whose skin was turning a deep crimson, roared. His muscles swelled, tearing his clothes. Trigger! He leaped, clearing the 30 feet to the catwalk in a single bound. He swung a fist the size of a wrecking ball at Izuku. Izuku dodged, ducking under the blow. The metal railing behind him was sheared off like paper. Subject is enhanced. Strength approximate to 15% one for all. Speed is sluggish. Izuku didn't retreat. He stepped into the guard space. Detroit. He started, out of habit, then cut himself off. Impact. He drove a fist into the man's liver. He controlled the output, precisely 25%. Enough to rupture, not enough to kill instantly. The giant gasped, eyes bulging. Izuku spun, sweeping the man's legs out from under him. As the giant fell, Izuku grabbed his ankle with Black Whip and threw him over the side of the catwalk. The man crashed into a stack of crates below, but the noise had drawn the rest. Bullets began to ping against the metal grating. Kill him! Someone screamed. Izuku vaulted over the railing. He didn't fall, he dove. Mid-air, he fired 3 shots of pressurized air, Delaware smashes restricted to finger flicks. Bang! 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 3 gunmen dropped, their weapons shattered or their shoulders dislocated by the air pressure. Izuku landed in a crouch in the center of the room. He was surrounded. 12 men. All armed. All high on trigger. They opened fire. Full call 30%. The world slowed down. The bullets moved like flies in amber. Izuku weaved through them. He wasn't just dodging, he was flowing. He closed the distance to the nearest gunman. A swift kick to the knee, shattering the patella. A palm strike to the chin. Next, a man with fire breath unleashed a torrent of flame. Izuku jumped, sticking to the ceiling with Black Whip, swinging over the flames, and dropping heel first onto the user's neck. It was a dance of violence. Brutal. Efficient. Silent. There were no speeches about justice. There was no "you can be better than this." There was only the wet thud of impact and the crunch of bone. Within 60 seconds, the factory floor was silent, save for the groans of the broken men. Izuku stood in the center of the carnage. His breath was ragged, but only slightly. He walked toward the main mixing vat. He placed his hands on the metal. One for all, 40%. He braced himself and pushed. The metal groaned, then buckled. He tore a massive hole in the side of the vat. The purple sludge poured out, flooding the floor. Ruined. Factory neutralized, Izuku said into his comms. Proceeding to command. Caution, asset, Mera's voice came back. Lieutenant Quan is a telekinetic. High level. Understood. Izuku turned to the heavy blast doors leading to the offices. He didn't knock. He kicked the door off its hinges. Part 5, The Lieutenant. The office was lavish, a stark contrast to the grime of the factory. Persian rugs, mahogany furniture, and air conditioning. Sitting behind the desk was Lieutenant Quan. He was a thin man, sipping a glass of wine. He didn't look surprised. Standing beside him was a bodyguard, A mountain of a man covered in organic steel plating. So, Quan said, his voice smooth. The Japanese send a child to do their cleaning. Izuku didn't speak. He stepped into the room. You ruined my batch, Quan sighed. That was worth $50 million. Surrender, Izuku said. It was the first time he had spoken to an enemy in weeks. And you will be taken into custody, Quan laughed. He waved a hand. Immediately, the mahogany desk flew at Izuku at the speed of a car. Izuku smashed it aside with a backhand, splinters raining down. Kill him, Quan ordered the bodyguard. The steel man charged. He was fast for his size. He tackled Izuku, slamming him into the wall. The drywall exploded. Izuku grunted. This guy was tough. Harder than Kirishima. The steel man hammered a fist into Izuku's ribs. Izuku caught it. Sorry, Izuku whispered. He activated Black Whip, wrapping the tendrils around the man's steel joints, binding them tight. Then, he channeled 35% into his legs. He kicked off the wall, flipping over the man, twisting in the air. The torque snapped the man's arm at the elbow joint. The bodyguard screamed and dropped to his knees. Izuku silenced him with a roundhouse kick to the helmeted head. The steel dented. The man slumped. Impressive, Quan said. He stood up. His eyes glowed purple. Suddenly Izuku felt a pressure in his brain. Not physical, mental. Telekinesis applied directly to the body. He was lifted off the ground. His limbs were pulled wide. He hung in the air, crucified by invisible force. You have a strong body, Quan mused, walking closer. He picked up a letter opener from the floor. But your organs are soft. He flicked his wrist. The letter opener flew at Izuku's eye. Izuku grit his teeth. He couldn't move his arms. He couldn't dodge. Think. The force was external. He was being held by psionic energy. One for all isn't just physical. It's energy. Izuku focused. He didn't try to break the hold physically. He pushed his aura out. He flooded his skin with 45% for a microsecond. The burst of pure power shattered the telekinetic grip like glass. Izuku dropped to the floor. Quan stumbled back, nose bleeding. What are you? Izuku lunged. Quan panicked. He grabbed everything in the room, chairs, lamps, the rug, and hurled them at Izuku. Izuku didn't stop. He punched through the furniture. He was a locomotive. He reached Quan. Quan pulled a pistol from his waistband. He fired point blank. Izuku twisted. The bullet grazed his side, tearing through the suit and cutting a deep trench across his ribs. Pain flared, hot and white, but the hesitation was gone. The hero Deku who would have flinched was back at UA. Asset Deku grabbed the gun barrel, crushing it. With his other hand he grabbed Quan by the throat and slammed him onto the floor. The impact cracked the foundation. Quan gasped, pinned. Wait. I can pay you. I can. Target secured, Izuku said to the empty room. He looked down at the man. He could snap his neck. It would be so easy. The commission would prefer it. No trial. No risk of escape. Izuku's hand tightened. The anger was there. The anger at the commission, at the villains, at the unfairness of the world. Do it, a dark voice whispered. Izuku closed his eyes. He saw All Might's face. He exhaled. He released the throat and punched the floor next to Quan's head. The shockwave knocked the man unconscious instantly. Izuku stood up, clutching his bleeding side. Mission complete, he rasped. Requesting extraction. Part 6. The Hardware Store. The helicopter ride back to the safe house in Bangkok was a blur of pain and vibration. Izuku sat in the back, a field medic working on his side. The medic wasn't Recovery Girl. There were no gummies. No kisses. No scolding about being careful. Hold him down, the medic said to an assistant. Do I get anesthetic? Izuku asked, his teeth chattering from shock. We're low on supply. Save it for the amputations. This is just flesh. Izuku bit down on his leather glove as the medic poured alcohol directly into the open wound. He screamed, a muffled, guttural sound that was lost in the roar of the rotors. Then came the stapler. Chunk. 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 Metal staples closing the skin. Cold. Efficient. Done, the medic said, wiping his hands. Wrap it up. He's got another briefing in 6 hours. They landed on the roof of a nondescript skyscraper. Izuku was ushered into a room that looked more like a cell than a hotel suite. White walls. A cot. A metal toilet. He was alone. Izuku walked to the small bathroom sink. He turned on the tap and splashed water on his face, washing away the mud, the sweat, and the blood that wasn't his. He looked up at the mirror. The boy staring back was Izuku Midoriya. He still had the freckles. He still had the unruly green hair, but the eyes were different. They were older. They were flat. The light that used to be there, the fanbush sparkle, the naive hope, had dimmed. In its place was a sharp, predatory awareness. He lifted his shirt. The row of metal staples across his ribs looked angry and red against his pale skin. Another scar to add to the map. He touched the reflection. I am still here, he whispered, trying to convince himself. I am still a hero. But the silence of the room argued back. His burner phone, hidden in his boot, a gift from Hawks he hadn't used yet, vibrated. He froze. He pulled it out. It was a text message. No number. I saw the report. You didn't kill him. Good. Don't let them take that from you. Wings. Izuku stared at the screen. A single tear leaked out, cutting a clean track through the grime on his cheek. He wasn't completely alone. Not yet. He hid the phone again. He walked to the cot and lay down, staring at the white ceiling. He closed his eyes, but sleep didn't come. Instead, he reviewed the mission. Mistake at 1400 hours mark. Allowed telekinetic to gain line of sight. Result, injury. Correction, next time, incapacitate immediately. No dialogue. He was learning. He was adapting. He was becoming the Atlas. Part 7, UA High. 3 days later. The package arrived at the Class 1A dorms with the morning mail. It was addressed to Class 1A. No return address. Mina brought it to the common room table. Guys. Look. A package. The class gathered around. Even Bakugo looked up from his breakfast. Is it from Midoriya? Kirishima asked, hope rising in his voice. Momo created a pair of scissors and carefully opened the box. Inside, there were no letters. No notes. There were just souvenirs, keychains from America. Statues of the Statue of Liberty. T-shirts that said I3 New York. Cheap, touristy junk. He's in New York. Hagakure squealed. Look! He sent us presents. The class erupted in cheers. He's okay. He's just busy. Kaminari shouted, holding up a keychain. Ochako picked up a small snow globe. It showed the Manhattan skyline. It looked happy. Normal, but Bakugo was staring at the box. He reached in and pulled out a receipt that had been accidentally left at the bottom. It was from a gift shop at JFK Airport. Dated 2 days ago. See? Ciro said. Proof. He's fine. Bakugo crumbled the receipt in his hand. He knew Izuku. He knew the nerd better than anyone. If Izuku was in America, studying to control his quirk, he would have sent a letter. He would have written pages and pages of analysis about American heroes. He would have asked how they were doing. He wouldn't send a box of generic, impersonal trash. This wasn't a gift. It was a cover story. It was alibi fabrication. Bakugo looked at the smiling faces of his classmates. They bought it. They were relieved. He looked at Aizawa, who was standing in the doorway. The teacher's face was unreadable, but he wouldn't meet Bakugo's eyes. He's not in New York, Bakugo thought, the anger burning hot in his gut. He's somewhere else. Somewhere bad. He stood up and walked out of the dorms, the I3 New York shirt falling from the table to the floor. Outside, the rain had started again. Part 1, the decompression chamber. The transition was the hardest part. In physics, rapid depressurization can kill a diver. The nitrogen bubbles in the blood expand, tearing through tissue, crippling the body. For Izuku Midoriya, the return to Tokyo felt like getting the bends. He sat in the back of the black sedan, the same one that had taken him away 2 months ago. The landscape outside had changed from the dense, suffocating jungles of Southeast Asia to the concrete sprawl of Mizurufu. The neon signs, the convenience stores, the civilians walking their dogs, it all looked fake. It looked like a movie set he had stumbled onto. Remember the narrative, Agent Mera said from the front seat. He didn't turn around. He was scrolling through a tablet, likely reviewing the casualty report from the raid on the Trigger compound. You are returning from an intensive quirk control seminar in the United States. Specifically, a remote facility in Nevada run by an associate of All Might. You focused on output regulation, Nevada, Izuku repeated. His voice felt rusty. He hadn't spoken more than 10 words a day for weeks, and those were usually tactical confirmations. Desert. Dry heat. Burgers, precisely. Keep the details vague. Classified training techniques. If they press, say it's proprietary. Mera paused, then glanced at Izuku through the rearview mirror. And Midoriya? Sir, relax your shoulders. You're sitting like you're in a drop seat waiting for a green light. Students slouch. They fidget. Try to remember how to be 15. Izuku looked down at his hands. They were resting on his knees, perfectly still. He forced himself to unclench a muscle in his thigh. He slumped slightly. It felt wrong. It felt like leaving a shield behind in a war zone. We have cleared your schedule for 72 hours, Mera continued. This is a mandatory psychological reset. The Commission's therapists suggest that maintaining social tethers prevents asset degradation. Asset degradation? That's what they called it when an agent forgot who they were and started enjoying the violence. Or when they broke down and couldn't pull the trigger anymore. I understand, Izuku said. The car pulled up to the main gate of UA High. The UA barrier sensors swept over the vehicle. The massive steel walls, once a symbol of safety, now looked like the walls of a prison. Or perhaps a zoo, a place where dangerous things were kept to be looked at, while the real predators roamed outside. We will monitor your vitals remotely, Mera said as the car stopped in front of the Heights Alliance dorms. If your heart rate spikes or you show signs of a psychotic break, we extract you immediately. Do not engage in quirks usage unless life-threatening. Do not discuss the Atlas Protocol. Do not discuss the mission. Understood. Izuku opened the door. The air smelled of rain and pavement. It lacked the metallic tang of blood and ozone he had grown accustomed to. He grabbed his bag, a generic duffel bag the HPSC had packed with souvenirs and clean clothes, and stepped out. The car pulled away silently, leaving him standing on the path. He looked up at the building. Lights were on in the common room. He could see silhouettes moving past the windows. He took a breath. He forced the corners of his mouth up. It was a mechanical action. Zygomaticus major. Orbicularis oculi. Smile, he commanded himself. You are Izuku Midoriya. You are a student. You are safe. He walked to the door and placed his hand on the scanner. Beep. Welcome back, Midoriya. The lock disengaged. Part 2, The Alien World. The sound hit him first. When the door slid open, a wall of noise washed over him. Laughter. The sound of a TV blaring a variety show. A Shido shrieking about a video game. The clatter of dishes. For a split second, Izuku's combat instincts flared. Too much noise. Tactical disadvantage. Cannot hear footsteps. Cannot triangulate threats. His eyes darted around the room, cataloging everything in under a second. Target 1, a Shido couch, distracted. Target 2, Kirishima standing, blind spot to the left. Target 3, Ida kitchen, wielding a knife, chopping carrots. Exits, main door, rear patio, ventilation duct in the ceiling. Midoriya? The shout broke his analysis. It was Kaminari. The electric user was pointing at the door, a half-eaten bag of chips in his hand. The room froze. Then, it exploded. Deku-kun, Midoriya, you're back. They swarmed him. It was a physical assault of affection. Ochako was there first, her eyes wide and watery. Ida was chopping the air with his free hand, thankfully having put the knife down. Kirishima slapped him on the back. The contact made Izuku's skin crawl. When Kirishima's hand hit his shoulder, Izuku flinched. It was a violent, spasmodic jerk. He twisted his body, his right hand shooting up to intercept a grapple that wasn't coming, his foot pivoting to sweep a leg that wasn't attacking. He stopped himself a millimeter before driving his palm into Kirishima's chin. The room went quiet. Kirishima blinked, his hand hovering in the air. Whoa, dude. You okay? You're super jumpy. Izuku lowered his hand slowly. His heart was hammering against his ribs, not from fear, but from the adrenaline dump of a aborted kill reflex. Sorry, Izuku said. His voice was too quiet. He cleared his throat and tried to inject some of the old Deku wobble into it. Sorry. The flight. It was really long. Turbulence. I'm a little wired. Jet lag, Ida proclaimed, adjusting his glasses. A formidable foe. The circadian rhythms are disrupted by rapid longitudinal travel. You must hydrate immediately. Yeah, Izuku said, forcing the smile again. Jet lag. You look different, Kero, Azuri said from the floor, her finger on her chin. Different? Izuku's pulse spiked. Did she notice the micro scars? The stance? You got a tan, she said. Izuku blinked. Oh. Yeah. Nevada. Lots of sun. And you're bigger, Ochako said softly. She was standing close to him, looking at his arms. He was wearing a long-sleeved shirt, but the muscle definition was visible underneath. The HPSC conditioning program focused on lean, dense muscle for endurance and stealth, stripping away any softness he had left. Did they have you lifting weights all day? Something like that, Izuku mumbled. He shifted his bag. I should go put this away. We saved you some curry. Sato called out from the kitchen. Spicy, just how you like it. Thanks, Sato-kun. Izuku moved through the crowd. He felt like a ghost walking through a party he wasn't invited to. They were so bright. So loud. So open. They left their backs exposed. They laughed without scanning the perimeter. They were children, and for the first time, Izuku realized with a sickening lurch that he wasn't. Not anymore. Part 3, The Sanctuary. His room was a shrine to a dead religion. Izuku closed the door and locked it. He leaned his forehead against the wood, breathing in the scent of dust and old paper. He turned around. All Might smiled at him from every wall. Posters. Figures. Bedspreads. The Silver Age. The Golden Age. The Bronze Age. It looked ridiculous. It looked like the room of a boy who believed that if he smiled hard enough and punched hard enough, everything would be okay. Izuku walked to his desk. He set the duffel bag down. He didn't unpack the souvenirs. Instead, he reached into his boot and pulled out the burner phone Hawks had given him. He taped it to the underside of his desk drawer. Then, he began to strip. He took off the blazer, the tie, the shirt. He walked to the full-length mirror on the back of his closet door. His torso was a tapestry of violence. The old scars, the ones from the muscular fight, the surgeries, were thick and white. But the new ones, they were angry. There was a jagged pink line across his ribs where the bullet had grazed him in Thailand. There were circular burns on his shoulder from a plasma quirk user in Jakarta. There were bruises in various shades of yellow and purple blooming across his back like storm clouds. He traced the staple marks on his side. The skin had healed over, but the texture was bumpy. Recovery Girl didn't do this, he thought. Field medics did. He looked at his arms. The support braces he used to wear were gone. The HPSC had upgraded his costume with internal compression weaving, but out of costume, his arms felt heavy. They felt like weapons he couldn't put down. He grabbed an All Might hoodie from his closet, one that was 2 sizes too big, and pulled it on. It swallowed him, hiding the map of his pain. He sat on his bed. The mattress was soft. Too soft. He sank into it. For the last 2 months, he had slept on cots, in cargo planes, or on the damp floor of safe houses. This softness felt like a trap. It made him feel vulnerable. He pulled his knees to his chest. I'm home, he whispered to the empty room, but he knew it was a lie. He was just between deployments. A knock at the door made him stiffen. Midoriya? It was Todoroki. Izuku took a breath. Yeah, Todoroki-kun? Come in. The door opened. Shoto Todoroki stood there, his heterochromatic eyes scanning Izuku with his usual blunt intensity. You miss soba night, Todoroki said. I know. I'm sorry. I ate your portion, Todoroki added. I didn't want it to go to waste. That's good. Thanks. Todoroki stepped into the room and closed the door. The atmosphere shifted. Todoroki wasn't like the others. He knew what it was like to be a project. To be a tool created by an adult for a specific purpose. Your eyes, Todoroki said. What about them? They look like my father's, Todoroki said simply. Not now. But back then. Before he became number one. When he was just hungry, Izuku flinched. I'm just tired, Todoroki-kun. The training was intense. Did you find what you were looking for? What do you mean? Control, Todoroki said. You left to get control. Did you get it? Izuku looked at his hand. He clenched it into a fist. He didn't feel the sparking energy of one for all anymore as a wild thing. He felt it as a cold current, a switch he could flip without emotion. Yeah, Izuku said, his voice hollow. I got it. But I think I left something else behind to make room for it. Todoroki nodded. He didn't ask what. He just understood. If you want soba, Todoroki said, turning to leave, I can make more. Cold soba is good for cooling down. Maybe later, Izuku said. Todoroki left. Izuku was alone again with the smiling ghosts of All Might. Part 4. The Dinner Table. Dinner was an exercise in torture. Izuku sat between Ida and Uraraka. The table was packed. The smell of curry was overwhelming. So, tell us about America. Momo Yaoyorozu asked politely. I visited Nevada before. Did you see the Grand Canyon? No, Izuku said, poking his rice with a chopstick. We were pretty isolated. Underground facility. Top secret. So cool. Mineta drooled. Did you meet any hot American heroines? Like Star and Stripe? No, Izuku said flatly. Just trainers. What kind of training? Ojiro asked. Was it sparring? Meditation? Target acquisition, Izuku said, then froze. That was HPSC terminology. He corrected himself. I mean, focus drills. Spotting the objective. Moving without thinking. Moving without thinking? Bakugo's voice cut through the chatter like a knife. Katsuki Bakugo was sitting across the table. He hadn't eaten much. He was watching Izuku with eyes that were narrowed into red slits. He was analyzing every twitch, every hesitation. Yeah, Izuku met his gaze. Reacting faster than the opponent. That's not training, Bakugo scoffed. That's instinct. You don't go to America for 2 months to learn instinct. You learn that in a street fight. Kaken, please, Izuku said wearily. I'm tired. You're full of shit, Bakugo muttered, loud enough for the table to hear. Bakugo! Ida scolded. Language! Midoriya has just returned. He's lying, Bakugo said, pointing a chopstick at Izuku. Look at him. He's not jet-lagged. He's paranoid. He's checked the exits 3 times since he sat down. He's holding his chopstick like a dagger. Izuku looked down. He was gripping the chopstick in a reverse grip, poised to stab. He slowly relaxed his hand. I've just been on edge, Izuku said. The training was high stress. Simulating villain attacks 24/7, whatever, Bakugo grunted. He stood up, taking his tray. I'm done. He stormed off toward the kitchen. The table was awkward after that. The conversation sputtered. Izuku ate mechanically, shoveling the food into his mouth not for taste, but for calories. Fuel. 3,000 calories needed to maintain muscle mass. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the kitchen. Someone had dropped a stack of metal pans. Crash. The sound was sharp, sudden, and indistinguishable from a gunshot in a confined space. Izuku didn't jump. He didn't scream. In one fluid motion, he was out of his chair and under the table. He flipped the table with one hand, creating a barricade, while dragging Uraraka down with his other hand, shielding her head with his body. Curry and rice flew everywhere. Plates shattered. Silence. Izuku was crouching behind the overturned table, breathing shallowly, eyes scanning for the shooter. His arm was clamped protectively over Uraraka, who was trembling against the floor. Midoriya? Uraraka whispered, terrified. Izuku blinked. The red haze in his vision cleared. He saw the spilled food. He saw Ida standing with curry on his shirt, looking shocked. He saw Kaminari in the kitchen doorway, looking pale, a fallen baking sheet at his feet. Sorry. Kaminari squeaked. I slipped. My hands were greasy. Izuku slowly released Uraraka. He looked at his hand. It was shaking. He looked around the room. His classmates weren't looking at him with admiration. They were looking at him with fear. He had reacted like a soldier in a war zone. Not a hero in a school. Izuku stammered. He stood up, his boots crunching on broken ceramic. I thought, dude, Siro said, breaking the silence. That was intense. I'm sorry, Izuku whispered. He felt bow rising in his throat. I have to go. He turned and ran. He ran out of the common room, past the stunned faces of his friends, and into the stairwell. Part 5, The Confrontation. He ran to the gym, Gym Gamma. It was unlocked. It was always unlocked. The massive concrete space was dark, illuminated only by the moonlight filtering through the high windows. It was quiet. Cold. Izuku walked to the center of the arena. He needed to burn it off. The adrenaline. The shame. He activated One for All. Green lightning crackled around his body. 5%? No. Too weak. 20%. He began to move. Shadowboxing. He punched the air, the shockwaves disturbing the dust. He moved faster, bouncing off the cement pillars, spinning, kicking. He wasn't practicing hero moves. He wasn't doing the Delaware Smash or the Manchester Smash. He was practicing kill shots. Throat chops. Knee breaks. Eye gouges. The movements were ugly. Vicious. So that's what they taught you. The voice came from the entrance. Izuku skidded to a halt, the lightning fading. Bakugo stood there. He was wearing his tank top and gym shorts. His arms were crossed. Go away, Kaken, Izuku said, turning his back. Make me, Bakugo challenged. He walked into the light. I knew you were lying. Focus drills. Bullshit. You move like a hitman, Deku. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I? Bakugo stepped closer. I know you. I know you overthink everything. I know you mumble. I know you cry when you stub your toe. But tonight? You didn't cry. You flipped a 300-pound table with one hand because Ponytail dropped a pan. I have PTSD. Izuku shouted, spinning around. Is that what you want to hear? The raid messed me up. Night-Eye died right in front of me. It's not just the raid, Bakugo said, his voice surprisingly calm. We were all in the raid. Kirishima was there. Ochako was there. They're shaken up. You're not shaken. You're hardened. Bakugo stopped a few feet away. Let me see. See what? The scars. The ones you're hiding under that hoodie. You think I didn't see you wince when Kirishima slapped your back? I fell during training. Liar. Bakugo lunged. It wasn't a real attack. It was a telegraph grab. He reached for Izuku's collar. In the past, Izuku would have flinched. Or he would have blocked clumsily. This time, Izuku's hand shot up. He caught Bakugo's wrist. He twisted, using Bakugo's momentum against him, stepping in and driving his shoulder into Bakugo's chest. It was a takedown move designed to dislocate a shoulder. At the last second, Izuku realized who he was holding. He pulled the punch, but the shove still sent Bakugo flying back 3 meters. Bakugo landed on his feet, skidding. Bakugo looked at his wrist. There were red marks where Izuku's fingers had dug in. That wasn't a hero move, Bakugo said quietly. Leave it alone, Katsuki, Izuku warned. He used the first name. It sounded strange, foreign. Bakugo looked up, eyes blazing. Who are you fighting, Deku? Who is doing this to you? I'm saving people, Izuku said, his voice trembling. I'm doing what All Might can't do anymore. I'm doing what you can't do, what we can't do. Bakugo scoffed. You think you're better than us now? Not better, Izuku said. He pulled up his left sleeve. He showed it. The ugly, mottled purple bruising. The burn marks from the jungle. The raw, jagged line of a knife wound that was still healing. Bakugo's eyes widened. He went silent. Dirtier, Izuku finished. I'm doing the dirty work so you guys can stay clean. So you can be the symbol of victory. I'm just a mechanism. Mechanism? Bakugo stepped forward, his anger replaced by a horrifying realization. You're a tool. That's what you're saying. The commission, they're using you. I volunteered. Because you're a self-sacrificial idiot. Bakugo yelled. explosions popping in his palms. You think destroying yourself is noble? It's not noble, Deku. It's just suicide with extra steps. It keeps you safe. Izuku screamed back. Tears finally pricked his eyes. They were going to shut us down. They were going to expose All Might. I didn't have a choice. The confession hung in the air. Bakugo stopped. The explosions died out. Blackmail, Bakugo whispered. Izuku wiped his eyes aggressively with his sleeve. It doesn't matter. I'm good at it, Kaken. I'm really good at it. I can use one for all at 45% now. I can take down villains before they even know I'm there. And when you're done? Bakugo asked. When there are no more villains? What's left of you? Izuku didn't answer. He didn't know the answer. You need to tell Aizawa, Bakugo said. He knows. He can't stop it. Then we'll stop it. No! Izuku stepped forward, green energy flaring. You stay out of it. If you interfere, they'll hurt you. They'll hurt All Might. You have to promise me, Kaken. You have to ignore it. Treat me like I'm normal. Please. Bakugo looked at the boy he had bullied, the boy he had rivaled, the boy he had secretly admired. He saw a soldier standing on a landmine, begging him not to step closer. Bakugo clenched his fists until his knuckles turned white. Fine, Bakugo spat. I won't tell the extras. But don't think for a second I accept this. He turned and walked toward the exit. He paused at the door. You smell like gunpowder and antiseptic, Bakugo said without looking back. It makes me sick. He slammed the door. Part 6. The Night Watch. Izuku didn't sleep that night. He lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling. The silence of the dorms was oppressive. Around 3 a.m. he got up. He moved silently through the hallways. He checked the locks on the front door. Secure. He checked the windows. Secure. He walked past the rooms of his classmates. He heard Sato snoring. He heard Tokoyami muttering in his sleep. He stopped outside room 302. Uraraka's room. He placed his hand on the doorframe. He remembered the feeling of her hand on his arm earlier. The warmth. The concern. I almost hurt her, he thought. I viewed her as a threat. The conditioning was working. It was overriding the person he used to be. He walked to the common room and stood by the window, looking out at the campus. His phone vibrated in his pocket. It was a text from Mera. Rest period concluding. Transport arrives at 0600. Target acquired in Hokkaido. Dress warm. Izuku looked at the time. 3:15. He had less than 3 hours of being a student left. He turned away from the window. He looked at the overturned table, which Ida had righted, but the crack in the floor tiles remained. A permanent scar on the dorms. A reminder that something dangerous lived here. Izuku went back to his room. He took down the All Might hoodie and folded it neatly. He put on his black tactical gear. He strapped the braces to his legs. He sat on the edge of the bed and waited for the sun to rise. He wasn't a ghost, he realized. A ghost was something that had died and lingered. He was something else. Something that was dying slowly, piece by piece, so that everyone else could live. He watched the sun come up over the horizon. It was beautiful. It was time to go to work. Part 1. The Arithmetic of Death. The concept of the moral event horizon is a theoretical boundary in ethics. It is the point where an individual commits an act so heinous, so fundamentally against their nature, that they can never return to who they were before. It is the point of no return. For Izuku Midoriya, sitting in the cargo hold of a high-altitude stealth transport cruising at 30,000 feet, the horizon wasn't theoretical. It was approaching at Mach 1. He was sharpening a knife. It was a combat knife, standard issue for the Atlas Protocol. The blade was matte black, ceramic composite, designed to cut through Kevlar and cork-hardened skin. He didn't need a knife. His fists could shatter concrete, but the Commission insisted on redundancies. Scritch. 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 The sound was rhythmic, hypnotic. It drowned out the hum of the engines. 5 minutes to drop, the pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. Zone is the Japanese Alps. Route 158. Conditions are blizzard. Visibility near zero. Izuku stopped sharpening. He sheathed the blade at his hip. He looked at the tablet strapped to his forearm. The mission briefing was glowing in amber text. Target, secure transport convoy, cargo, 3 dormant near Hyanomus. Origin, Detnerat Black Site, Niigata. Destination, Paranormal Liberation Front Stronghold, Kyoto. Objective, intercept and destroy. No cargo reaches the destination. It seemed simple. Standard interdiction. He had done 3 of these in the last month. Stop the truck, smash the engine, neutralize the Nomu before it fully wakes up, disappear before the police arrive. But something felt off. Handler, Izuku spoke into his comms. The connection to HPSC headquarters was instant. The intel on the drivers. Who are they? Agent Mara's voice was dry, sounding like rustling paper. Does it matter, Asset? They are transporting biological weapons capable of leveling cities. They are enemy combatants. It matters for engagement protocols, Izuku said. Are they PLF lieutenants? Clones? Mercenaries? There was a pause on the line. A hesitation that Izuku's hyperanalyzing brain caught instantly. Intel suggests they are low-level sympathizers, Mara said. Expendable labor. Do not let them delay you. The window for interception is tight. If those Nomus reach the tunnel network, we lose them. If we lose them, they will be used to attack a population center within 48 hours. Sympathizers, Izuku repeated. The greater good is a numbers game, Midoriya, Mara said, his voice hardening. 3 trucks. 3 monsters. Millions of potential victims. Do the math. Approaching drop zone, the pilot interrupted. Depressurizing cabin. The rear ramp of the plane began to lower. The howling wind of the blizzard screamed into the hold, instantly freezing the sweat on Izuku's neck. The world outside was a void of swirling white and black. Izuku stood up. He pulled his cowl over his face. The green lenses flared to life, cutting through the darkness with thermal imaging. He walked to the edge of the ramp. Do the math, he whispered to himself. He jumped. Part 2, the white void. Falling through a blizzard was like falling through broken glass. The wind bit at every exposed millimeter of his suit. Izuku didn't panic. He fell in a skydive position, tracking the heat signatures on the mountain road 10,000 feet below. There, 3 massive heat blooms. Semi-trucks moving in a convoy. They were driving fast, dangerously fast for the icy conditions. Izuku adjusted his angle. He didn't use a parachute. A parachute was slow. A parachute was visible. At 2,000 feet he fired Black Whip. The black tendrils shot out, latching onto the sheer rock face of the mountain pass. The sudden tension jerked his arm violently, but he reinforced the muscle with 30% full cowl. He swung, turning his terminal velocity into forward momentum. He was a pendulum of black steel swinging through the snow. He landed on the roof of the rearmost truck. The impact was heavy, denting the metal trailer, but the roar of the blizzard masked the sound. The truck swerved slightly, then corrected. Izuku crouched, his boots digging into the metal. He scanned the cab of the truck with his X-ray sensors. 1 driver. 1 passenger. He zoomed in. His heart stopped. The passenger wasn't a soldier. It wasn't a villain in tactical gear. It was a woman. Middle-aged. She was weeping, clutching a photo in her hands. He looked at the driver. A man, sweating profusely despite the cold, his eyes wide and dilated. His hands were gripping the wheels so hard his knuckles were white. No weapons. Izuku tapped his comms. Handler. Visual on the rear truck. Occupants are unarmed. They look distressed. Ignore them, Mara ordered. Destroy the engine. They aren't PLF, Izuku hissed, the wind tearing his words away. They look like civilians. They are driving the bomb, Deku. That makes them part of the bomb. Engage. Izuku hesitated. Suddenly, the driver of the rear truck looked in the side mirror. He must have seen the shadow of Izuku on the roof. The driver didn't reach for a gun. He didn't radio for backup. He swerved the truck toward the cliff edge. What? Izuku gasped. The driver was trying to kill himself. No! Izuku moved. He didn't smash the engine. He smashed the windshield. He shattered the glass and dove into the cab. The cold air rushed in. The driver screamed. Don't let them hurt her. The driver yelled, yanking the wheel hard to the left, toward the abyss. 1 for all, 20%. Izuku grabbed the steering wheel with one hand and the brake pedal with his hand, having to contort his body in the cramped space. He crushed the metal of the wheel, forcing it back to the right. The truck fishtailed. The trailer swung out, smashing into the guardrail. Sparks flew like fireworks. "Stop!" Izuku shouted. "I'm not going to hurt you. They have our son!" The woman screamed, clawing at Izuku's mask. "They said if we stop he dies." Skeptic said he's watching. Skeptic. The PLF executive. It wasn't a convoy of sympathizers. It was a convoy of hostages. "Handler!" Izuku roared into the comms, his voice cracking with rage. "They're coerced. They have leverage on their families. They aren't villains. The mission parameters have not changed," Mara said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "If they don't stop, the Nomas get through. Neutralize the vehicle. If the driver dies, it is tragic, but acceptable. It is not acceptable to me." The truck was skidding on the ice. The trailer, heavy with the dormant Nomu, was dragging them toward the cliff. The brakes were gone. Izuku looked at the terrified couple. He had a choice. He could jump. Let gravity take the truck over the edge. The Nomu would be destroyed. The mission would be a success. 2 innocents would die, or he could save them. But saving them meant stopping a 40-ton truck on black ice without killing the occupants, while 2 other trucks escaped. Do the math. Screw the math, Izuku snarled. He kicked the driver's door off its hinges. "Get out!" he ordered. He grabbed the woman and the man with black whip. He jumped out of the moving truck, pulling them with him. They hit the snowbank hard. Izuku took the brunt of the impact, shielding them with his body. Behind them, the truck smashed through the guardrail. It hung there for a second, teetering. Then, the trailer split open. It didn't fall. A hand, gray, muscular, and terrifyingly large, punched through the metal roof of the trailer. The near-high-end Nomu had woken up. Part 3, The Walking Nightmare. The Nomu was lanky, with 4 arms and a beak like a plague doctor. It pulled itself out of the wreckage of the trailer before the truck plummeted into the ravine. It landed on the icy road with a heavy thud. It screeched, a sound that vibrated in Izuku's teeth. "Run," Izuku said to the couple. "Get behind the rocks. Do not look back." The civilians scrambled away, slipping in the snow. The Nomu turned its eyeless head toward Izuku. "Target acquired," the Nomu gurgled. It could speak. Intelligence. That was bad. Asset, Mara's voice was sharp. You let the other 2 trucks get away. You just compromised the entire operation for 2 assets of 0 strategic value. "I'm cleaning up the mess," Izuku panted. He stood up, assuming a fighting stance. The snow crunched under his iron soles. "Track the other trucks. Send hawks. Send anyone. You are the only one in range, you idiot. Finish this quickly and pursue." The Nomu charged. It was fast. Faster than the ones at USJ. Izuku dodged a 4-armed barrage of punches. The air pressure from the mist cracked the asphalt. Quirks, super strength. Regeneration. Some kind of blade generation on the elbows. Izuku couldn't use 100%. If he broke his bones here, in the cold, with civilians nearby, they were all dead. He had to be perfect. Black whip! He snagged the Noma's left arms. He pulled, trying to off-balance it. The Noma didn't budge. Instead, blades sprouted from its flesh, severing the black energy tendrils. It lunged, driving a knee into Izuku's stomach. The breath left him. The armor held, but his ribs groaned. He was knocked backward, sliding 50 feet down the icy road. He scrambled up. The Noma was already on him. It raised a fist to crush him. Think. The other trucks were getting away. Every second he spent here was a second closer to failure. He needed to end this in one hit. He looked at the Noma's exposed brain. Manchester smash. Izuku leaped. He channeled 45% into his leg. He spun in the air, bringing his heel down like an axe. The Noma blocked with all 4 arms. Crack. The force was immense. The asphalt beneath the Noma shattered into a crater. The Noma's arms broke. But it didn't die. It grabbed Izuku's leg with its broken, twisted fingers. It slammed him into the ground. Once. Twice. Blood filled Izuku's mouth. The world spun. Get up. You have to save them. The Nomu raised a bladed elbow to decapitate him. Izuku saw the civilians cowering behind a rock. If he died, they were next. A surge of pure, desperate refusal flooded his veins. One for all screamed in harmony with his will. Float. Gravity released him. He shot upward, dodging the blade by a millimeter. He hovered in the air, blood dripping from his mask. St. Louis. Smash! He dove. He didn't aim for the arms. He aimed for the neck. He hit the Nomu with the force of a meteor. The impact severed the creature's head cleanly. The body collapsed. Izuku landed, panting. Steam rose from his suit. One down, he rasped. He looked down the road. The taillights of the other two trucks were fading into the blizzard. Go, Mera said. Leave the civilians. If those trucks reach the tunnel, it's over. Izuku looked at the couple. They were freezing. Hypothermia would kill them in 20 minutes. I can't leave them, Izuku said. If you don't pursue, you are responsible for every death those remaining Nomus cause. That is the burden of the hero, Midoriya. The choice. Izuku looked at his hands. He made the choice. He shot a line of black whip, ripping the door off a nearby maintenance shed. He ushered the couple inside. Stay here. Wrap yourselves in the tarp. Help is coming. Then, he turned and ran. He didn't run like a human. He ran like a wolf. He used black whip to sling himself from telephone pole to telephone pole, ignoring the tearing of his muscles, ignoring the cold. He had to catch the trucks. Part 4. The tunnel. He caught them at the entrance to the tunnel. The lead truck had stopped. The driver was arguing with the driver of the second truck. A landslide, caused by the weather, had partially blocked the road. Luck. Or divine intervention. Izuku didn't hesitate this time. He landed on the hood of the second truck. The driver, a young man, no older than 20, screamed. Izuku punched through the engine block. The truck died instantly, but the commotion woke the cargo. Boom, boom. Both trailers exploded outward simultaneously. Two near Hyans. One was a hulking beast covered in rock-like armor. The other was wiry, crackling with electricity. Izuku stood on the hood of the dead truck. He was tired. He was hurt. And now he was outnumbered. Status? Mera asked. 2 hostiles. Active. Road blocked. Contain them. The electric Nomu fired a bolt of lightning. Izuku dodged, but the bolt hit the fuel tank of the truck he was standing on. Explosion. The shockwave threw Izuku into the air. He slammed into the tunnel wall, his vision graying out. He fell to the snow, groaning. His left arm hung uselessly at his side. Dislocated. The rock Nomu charged. It was slow, but heavy. The electric Nomu flitted around, preparing another blast. And in the middle of it all, the drivers were scrambling out of their cabs, running toward the tunnel. Don't let them enter the tunnel, Mera shouted. If they escape, they leak intel. They're hostages. Izuku yelled back, popping his shoulder back into socket with a sickening pop and a scream of pain. They are liabilities. Secure the area asset. The rock Nomu picked up the wreckage of a car and threw it at the running drivers. Izuku moved. He intercepted the car in midair, catching it with his good arm and his back. The weight crushed him into the asphalt. He felt something in his spine crack. Run! He choked out to the drivers. The drivers fled into the dark tunnel. Now it was just him and the monsters. The electric Nomu cackled, a horrific, mimic sound, and charged up a massive blast. It aimed not at Izuku, but at the tunnel entrance. It was going to collapse the mountain on top of the escapees. No! Izuku pushed his limits. Full 100%. He used the kinetic energy stored in FA gene. He combined it with 45% of One for All. He used Black Whip to slingshot himself. He moved faster than the lightning. He appeared in front of the electric Nomu. He didn't punch. He grabbed its face. Smash! He discharged the energy directly into the creature's skull. The Nomu vaporized from the neck up, but the recoil destroyed the gauntlet on Izuku's right hand. His fingers shattered. He fell, rolling in the snow. The rock Nomu was still there. It roared and charged. Izuku tried to stand, but his legs gave out. He was at his limit. The cold, the injuries, the exhaustion. The rock Nomu raised a massive fist. I'm going to die, Izuku thought. I'm going to die here, alone, in the dark. No, not yet. He saw the drivers peeking out from the tunnel darkness. They were watching him. They were terrified. He had to be the wall. Izuku forced himself up. He swayed. His vision was tunneling. The rock Noma swung. Izuku ducked under the blow. He placed his shattered hand against the Noma's chest. Black whip. Internal. He forced the tendrils inside the cracks of the Noma's rock armor. Expand. He poured everything he had left into the tendrils. They expanded violently inside the creature. The Noma's armor shattered from the inside out. It shrieked and fell apart, a pile of gore and rocks. Silence returned to the mountain pass. Izuku stood there for a moment, swaying in the wind. The snow was turning red around his feet. He looked at the tunnel. The drivers were safe. He tapped his earpiece. Threat neutralized, he whispered. Then, he collapsed face first into the snow. Part 5. The White Room. Waking up was a slow, painful process. Izuku opened his eyes. White ceiling. White walls. The smell of antiseptic and ozone. He wasn't in UA. He wasn't in a hospital. He was in the HPSC medical wing. He tried to sit up, but his body screamed. He was strapped to the bed. Not with cork restraints, but with medical bindings to keep him immobile. Don't move, a voice said. Agent Mera was sitting in a chair in the corner. He was reading a file. He looked tired, as always. You have 3 fractured ribs, a dislocated shoulder, 4 broken fingers, and severe hypothermia. Your recovery capability is impressive, but you aren't invincible. Izuku stared at the ceiling. The drivers? Alive, Mera said. He didn't sound happy about it. Local police picked them up. We had to scrub the reports. Wipe the traffic cam footage. Bribe the officers. A logistical nightmare. They were innocent, Izuku croaked. They were transporting weapons that could have killed thousands, Mera countered. He closed the file and stood up, walking to the side of the bed. And you, Midoriya, almost let the mission fail because you couldn't do the math. I saved them, Izuku said, turning his head to look at Mera. His eyes were dull. And I stopped the Nomus. That's a win. Is it? Mera leaned in. You pushed your body to 110% to compensate for your hesitation. You broke yourself to save 3 people who were helping the enemy, whether they wanted to or not. That's what a hero does. That is what All Might did. Mera snapped, his composure cracking. And look at him. He is a cripple. He burned himself out trying to save everyone, and he left the world defenseless. Mera paced the room. We created the Atlas Protocol to avoid that mistake. We need a surgeon, not a shield. A surgeon cuts out the tumor. He doesn't hug the cancer hoping it goes away. People aren't cancer, Izuku whispered. Villains are, Mera said coldly. And sometimes, the tissue surrounding the tumor has to be sacrificed to save the patient. That is the reality of the world you live in now. Mera pulled a remote from his pocket. He turned on a monitor on the wall. It showed footage from the tunnel. Grainy security cam footage that hadn't been scrubbed yet. It showed Izuku fighting the electric Nomu, but it also showed something else. In the chaos, one of the drivers, the young man from the second truck, had panicked. He had picked up a fallen gun from the debris. He had pointed it at Izuku, likely thinking Izuku was a monster too. The footage showed Izuku reacting. He had spun around. He had raised his hand. A blast of air pressure had knocked the gun away. But the footage was slow motion. Izuku watched his own face. The expression wasn't heroic. It was pure, unadulterated rage. It was the face of a killer, and the air blast. It had missed the man's head by an inch. If his aim had been off by a degree, the man's head would have been taken off. Look at that, Mera whispered. You were scared. You were hurt. And for a split second, your instinct wasn't to save. It was to eliminate the threat. Izuku stared at the screen. He felt sick. You hesitated, Mera said. Next time, you might not be so lucky. Next time, the civilian might pull the trigger. Or the Nomu might kill them while you're trying to be gentle. Mera turned off the screen. There is a line, Midoriya. A horizon. On one side, you are a hero who saves everyone and dies young, leaving the world to burn. On the other side, you are a soldier who makes the hard choices, kills the few to save the many, and survives to fight another day. Mera walked to the door. You are dancing on that line. and sooner or later you will have to cross it. Because the world is getting darker, and your light is running out of fuel. Mara left the room. The lock clicked shut. Part 6, The Abyss. Izuku lay in the silence. He replayed the footage in his mind. The gun. The rage. The air blast. He had almost killed that man, not because he had to, but because in that moment, amidst the pain and the cold, the man was just another obstacle. Just another number in the equation. The moral event horizon. He had stood on the edge of it today. He had looked into the abyss, and for the first time, the abyss didn't look scary. It looked efficient. It looked easy. If he had just let the trucks fall, he wouldn't be broken right now. The threat would be gone. No, he told himself violently. No. That's what they want me to think. He tried to summon the image of All Might. Of his mother. Of Uraraka. But the images were faint. Grayed out. Instead, he saw the red snow. He felt the snap of the Noma's neck. He felt the recoil of the gun he had crushed. He closed his eyes, and a single tear leaked out. He was saving people. He was stopping villains. He was doing everything right. So why did he feel like he was losing his soul? Izuku Midoriya lay in the white room, bound and broken, and realized with a terrifying clarity that the hardest fight wasn't against Shigaraki or All for One. It was against the person the Commission was turning him into, and he wasn't sure if he was winning anymore.